Okay, so let's keep going with this. So the Egyptian god comes to an Egyptian king and says, I got all these cool inventions, and they go over all the inventions. But the invention that's most interesting to Socrates is the Egyptian god offers the Egyptian king the invention of writing. Because at this point in history, the myth goes, no one knew how to write things down. And the god has invented letters so you can write shit down. And he offers it to the king because he wants the king to give it to the Egyptian people. And the king has been listening to all the inventions that this god has come up with, math and games and all this geometry, all this shit. And now it's time to talk about writing. Is that a good invention or not? Now, already students are often thrown by this. And one thing that bothers some of my students here is that you're like, well, didn't people always write? Writing's not an invention. But it is. Um, Oftentimes, if I ask my students to say what's the most important invention, they'll often say shit like the internet or airplanes or like guns or boats or whatever invention. But you forget that like writing is an invention. It doesn't feel like an invention. It's so old. It feels like we must always have had the ability to write, but we didn't. Writing things down is an invention. It's such a big invention, and so many people know how to do it. You don't think about it anymore, but it's actually a pretty huge deal. Writing is a crazy invention. It allows you to take the ideas in your brain and put them on a piece of paper. And then you could put that piece of paper in a box, and 400 years later, somebody could open the box, and then their thoughts from 400 years ago would appear in your brain in the modern world and could have an effect on somebody 400 years later. It's pretty impressive. It's almost like mind reading and time travel because you can get in somebody's head across hundreds and hundreds of years. Even though you died a long time ago, your ideas live on if you can write them down. Whereas before, when you couldn't write stuff down, your best bet was to tell somebody and hope that they told 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 somebody and that somebody remembered all that shit 400 years later. And if you've ever played the game Telephone, which is this game where you tell a little kid, you get like a bunch of little kids in the classroom, like 30 kids, and you give one kid like a sentence, and you tell that kid to tell the kid next to him, and that kid to tell the kid next to him, and that kid to tell the kid next to him, and that kid to tell the kid next to him, and that kid to tell the kid next to him, and that kid to tell the kid next to him. By the time it gets all the way down the line, the sentence has changed. It's gone crazy. It's called the game is called Telephone. By the way, British people are they call it Chinese whispers because I think it's just racist. I think they just think Chinese people don't make any sense, and so they call it Chinese whispers. I don't know. It's just racist. I lived in England for a couple of years, and they said, "Oh, it's called Chinese whispers," and I was like, "Oh my God, you guys are hella racist," and they were like, "Oh shit, I never thought about that before." Um, so the point is that that's not a reliable way to send your words into the future, right? If you tell your son something and he tells his son something and he tells his son something and he tells his son something, it's not a good way to get information to last 400 years because people are going to forget. With writing, you can put down your exact words, put them in a box. Somebody can open the box 1,000 years later and read it. Here we are, by the way, reading a piece by Plato. Plato wrote this book 2,500 years ago. Here we are reading it. So this is an invention, and Socrates wants to discuss this invention. So let's hear what the king of Egypt has to say about the invention of writing that has been brought to him by the god Thoth. Okay. Um, so here's the thing. But when they came to letters, meaning the invention of the writing, this, said Thoth, will make the Egyptians wiser and give them better memories. It is a specific both for the memory and the wit. Specific seems like the wrong word. I have to look that up. I think about it as like a medicine. It's medicine for both the memory and the wit, right? I mean, wit means intelligence. So he says, listen, writing is a great invention, right? It's going to make the Egyptians wiser. It's going to give them better memories, right? It's essentially going to help them with both their memory and their intelligence. Thamus, that's the king, said, "O most ingenious Thoth," meaning like, oh, you bet you think you're pretty smart. He says the parent or inventor of an art, meaning a skill, is not always the best judge of the utility or inutility of his own inventions to the users of them, right? He says, listen, people who invent things, oftentimes they're not a good judge about whether they're good inventions or not. You know who gets to decide whether an invention, you can invent whatever you want. You know who gets to decide whether your invention is good? The people who use it. And the king here says, I don't know if you think that writing is great because it's going to help memory and intelligence. And the king says, I don't know if that's right. I think that it actually might not do that at all. So the king says here, he says, and in this instance, you who are the father of letters, from a paternal love of your own children, right? Because these inventions are his children. And just like parents love their children, the God loves his invention of letters. And he says, but you're not seeing it clearly. He says, you have been led to attribute them a quality which they cannot have. Right? I mean, you think writing is great because you invented it, but it's actually not as good as you think it is. For this discovery of yours will create forgetfulness in the learner's souls. Remember, soul means mind. Will create forgetfulness in the learner's souls because they will not use their memories. They will trust to the external written characters and not remember of themselves. The specific, boy, that is the wrong word. I really need to look this up. Medicine. The medicine which you have discovered is an aid not to memory, but to reminiscence. Meaning it's not gonna help you. It's not going to help you have a good memory. It's like an external memory. It's like rewrite something down so you can remember it because it's written down. Memory is when you remember something in your brain. Reminiscence is like when you see something old and it reminds you of something you once knew. He says, you give your disciples not truth, but the semblance of truth. Meaning the semblance here means illusion. When you give somebody writing, you're not giving them truth. You're giving them the illusion of truth. They will be learners of many things and will have learned nothing. They will appear to be omniscient, meaning they're going to appear to know a lot, and generally know nothing. They will be tiresome company, having the show of wisdom without the reality. This is a mega super debate. It is a fascinating debate. Just that God says, hey, I've got this great invention, writing. And here's what writing is going to do for you. The God comes to the king and he says, hey, king, I got this great stuff for the Egyptian people, and I'm going to give it to you. And he says, it's great. Once you get writing, it's going to be awesome because it's going to help people with their memories, and it's going to help their intelligence because they're going to be able to learn things in books, and also they can write things down in books, which will help them remember shit, so stuff won't get forgotten from generation to generation. And the king says, ooh, no. He says, I know you love these things because you invented them just like a father loves a child, but I don't think these inventions are as good as you think they are. And he says, this is not going to help people with memory. It's going to cause forgetfulness because people are going to write it down and then they're going to forget about it. He says it's going to cause it because if you want to have a good memory, you got to use your memory. Whereas if you're writing shit down, you don't have to use your memory anymore. You got it written down, so you just forget all about it. I'm sure you guys know this. I used to have, when I was a kid, I used to have everybody's phone numbers memorized because I needed to know what they were so I could dial the phone. But then when the iPhone came out, it remembers the numbers for you, right? You just click on the person's name and it goes to, and you put the number in the phone, but then when you click on their name, it goes to their phone. Well, when I was a kid, I used to know phone numbers. I memorized all the phone numbers of all my friends I wanted to talk to on the phone. But now that I have the iPhone, I don't know anybody's phone number. I don't know my parents' phone number. I don't know my wife's phone number. The phone remembers for me. So it's able to, the writing things down, the God says is going to help with memory. And the king says, dude, I think you're wrong. It's actually going to cause forgetfulness. Now, one of the things I'm interested in is they're talking about books. They say if you write things down in books, you're going to forget them in your brain. It's going to make your memory worse. But it's also worth thinking about that the internet is a place where we store, like writing is a place where we store information, right? You got a bunch of information, you write a book, and then all the information is stored in the book. Awesome. But the internet is also a place where we store information. So it's worth asking, is the internet like writing? In the sense that it allows you to store a bunch of information so that you can forget it. He thinks so he's concerned about writing, and he says it's not going to help with memory. And he also, the bigger problem is because remember the other thing that God said was that this writing would make people smarter because they could learn books and learn things. They could read books and learn things. So he says the other thing writing's going to do is going to help with memory. King says it's not going to help with memory. It's going to cause people to forget shit. And then he says, the other good thing about writing, he says, is it's going to help people get smart because they can read books and be smart. This is a pretty basic, simple thing to say. But the king of Egypt says, no, dude, you are wrong. Writing is not going to make you smart. He says, I think what writing is going to do is it's going to give you, not truth, the illusion of truth. It's not going to give you knowledge, but it's going to trick you into thinking you have knowledge. That is a crazy thing to say because you are in school and professors love books, and this is a book about why books are bad for you. See you next video.